The year 1910 saw a massive change in college football. The death and serious injuries of the 1909 college football season created yet another crisis, and this time it was not due to media sensationalism, as had been a huge factor in creating the much more well-known crisis of 1905. You know, the one where Teddy Roosevelt got involved and, as we've all been told, saved football forever. Football rules makers made changes in 1906 in response to the 1905 crisis, but those changes didn't remove the deadly nature of the sport, particularly mass play, so the rules makers found themselves buried by controversy once again. The 1909 crisis was solely focused on fatalities and injuries due to the high-profile deaths that occurred that season. For more on that, see the video entitled "The Day Football Almost Died," unveiling the untold story of the 1909 crisis. Evidence of the nature of this crisis is found in John Sale Watterson's book, College Football, History, Spectacle, Controversy, where on page 120 he relates a portion of a letter sent from Amos Alonzo Stagg, a member of the Rules Committee since 1904, to Walter Camp, the father of American football, stating, "We certainly have got to do something, Walter, for the season has been a mighty bad one for a number of individuals as well as for the game." Now, there was still a demand for open style of play, as spectators were tired of the mass plays that featured offensive players globbed together, ramming themselves repeatedly into the defense. Mass play was not only extremely dangerous, but committed the ultimate sin in America, and that it was boring. It was clear radical change was in order. I'm John Johnston, and this is Hardcore College Football History. The powers that be, otherwise known as the Intercollegiate Athletics Association, which would later be renamed to the NCAA, another organization we know and love, set its sights on reforming the game of football to remove the most dangerous elements. Therefore, specific focus in 1910 was on eliminating mass play, outlawing the diving tackle, and opening up offensive play by making the forward pass more useful as an offensive weapon. Now, you might think that this is an easy process, but the problem was there were different factions, and they fought each other to establish the new rules. The big three at that time were Yale, Harvard, and Princeton. They were the three most powerful schools in college football, and they were against any radical reform, which really means they wanted to retain mass play and did as much as possible to stymie the usefulness of the forward pass. Yale, Harvard, and Princeton had won massive amounts of games playing under the old rules, and they didn't want to lose their prestige, lose games, and of course cost themselves money in the process. So they actively worked against the establishment of more progressive rules, or what they saw were more radical changes. One article appearing in newspapers across the nation featured a Yale coach and an All-American fullback from Harvard that contained the headline, "Forward Pass Dangerous Play." In the article, the forward pass was stated to be the direct cause of almost every injury in 1909, which was a lie. And the article said the pass should be limited to behind the line of scrimmage. The factions who wanted to retain mass play were proposed that the forward pass could only be thrown behind the line of scrimmage, which they knew would limit its usefulness. And thankful for the other side, they knew that this was a huge issue and something they weren't going to be allowing to be happen. I'm not going to go into all the politics of all the rules committee changes and the back and forth of what happened, because it's very complex and is covered quite well in the aforementioned John Sale Watterson book about college football. Watterson's book is quite well researched, and if you want to know more about the details, I'd recommend reading it. Just be warned that it is written in an academic style, which it means it can be kind of dry. It is not a glory story book, and by that I mean it doesn't wax poetically about a small-town boy who overcomes all odds to become the most well-known and best college football player in the nation. It's not one of those. Rules changes. Let's talk about the rules changes that were made in 1910 and why they were important. We'll start with the more mundane and end with the controversial and complicated forward pass rules. The first rule is substitution. A player who has been removed for any cause except disqualification or suspension may be returned to the game once at the beginning of any subsequent period. They made this change because they wanted players who were exhausted to be able to take a break but come back into the game, and that wasn't previously allowed. Next rule, length of the game. The game is divided into 4 periods of 15 minutes, each 60 minutes in all, with the usual intermission between the second and third periods, but a 3-minute intermission only between the first and second and third and fourth periods. Sounds complicated, doesn't it? In other words, they took a break between the quarters, again, because they wanted to get rid of players being exhausted, and this was a problem before where they had mass play, that they worried about players getting exhausted and therefore having more of a chance of serious injury. Next rule, crawling. Crawling has been defined as an attempt to advance the ball by the runner after the ball is declared dead and is penalized. So believe it or not, crawling was a big part of the offense before 1910. For years, ball carriers were responsible for calling themselves down rather than an official blowing a whistle. In 1906, a new rule was put in place that stated the following: downing a runner. The runner is down with any part of his body except his foot or hand touches the ground while in the grasp of an opponent. Note that pesky passage about being in the grasp of an opponent. Ball carriers tended to crawl or have their teammates pull them along the ground to gain yardage. Defenders, in order to make them stop, would jump on them, sometimes with their knees first. This was a part of the game, and the rules makers wanted to eliminate crawling because of the possibility of severe injuries. Therefore, the new crawling penalty was put in place. Quarterback. The player who first receives the ball when it is snapped back may carry it across the line of scrimmage at any point. Now, previously, the quarterback was forced to move 5 yards to the left or right before they could run forward. This rule resulted in the field being laid out like a checkerboard. So if you think about that, there was no such thing as a quarterback sneak before this rule was put in place. Now, the diving tackle. A player, when tackling an opponent, must have at least 1 foot on the ground. The diving tackle was targeted specifically because of a serious injury in 1909. Earl Wilson of the Naval Academy suffered paralysis after being hit by a flying tackle. Wilson died in April 1910 of his injury. And it was common for players to leave their feet to dive in an opposing player to perform a tackle. Sometimes this was required because of the mass play. Players would try to jump over a group of blockers, known as interference then, but the blockers would be running in front of a ball carrier, maybe with their arms interlocked, and they would try to leap over those players who were running interference, and they would try to tackle the ball carrier behind the blockers with a diving tackle. Sounds wild. Next rule, and an important rule, 7 players on the line of scrimmage. 7 players of the side holding the ball must be on the line of scrimmage. Now this goes with the next rule, which is interlocked interference. Players of the side of having the ball, taking hold of each other, or using their hands or arms to grasp their teammates in any way is forbidden. And it is also forbidden any man on the side having possession of the ball to push or pull in any way the man running with the ball. Sounds complicated. The rule concerning 7 players on the line of scrimmage and interlocked interference were specifically created to eliminate mass play. Previously, only 6 players were required on the line of scrimmage, and that additional player would line up in the backfield and become part of the mass that would target the defensive tackle position. Now, regarding interlocked interference, during a mass play, the ball carrier would be surrounded by players who would interlock their arms so defensive players couldn't break through to tackle the ball carrier. Now, the teammates would also push and pull the ball carrier to make yardage and pull him along, to move him down the field. And this was the central component of mass play. Defenders would try to jump over the mass to hit the ball carrier, or they would throw themselves underneath to stop the momentum. And the pushing and pulling rule was required to completely eliminate mass play, period. The 7 players on the line of scrimmage wasn't enough. So the people who were adamant that mass play had to be eliminated kept pushing for that specific rule, that there would be no more pushing and pulling of a ball carrier. John Sale Watterson notes in his book, some of the diehards who wanted mass play straddled the fence by requiring 7 men on the line of scrimmage without declaring mass play itself unlawful. In other words, they didn't want that rule about interlocking interference put into the game. This moves us on to the forward pass. And the actual explanation of the forward pass rule is long and complicated, so I'm going to try to shorten it and simplify it. Number 1, only what we refer to as tight ends can receive the ball. A pass cannot be longer than 20 yards. The quarterback no longer has to move 5 yards to the left or right before passing, as they did before, but they must be 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage when the pass is thrown. The rule requiring the passer to be at least 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage remained a part of college football until 1945. Defensive players may not interfere with the receivers until the ball is in the possession of the player, except in an attempt to get the ball. Before this rule was passed, the defenders, if they thought a guy was going to catch the ball, they'd just knock him down or tackle him in the open field. And this is like a pass interference rule finally being made so that you could actually throw the ball to somebody and they could catch it without being bludgeoned before the ball got there. Now keep in mind, you still couldn't score with a pass into the end zone. If the ball crossed the goal line in the air, it became a touchback. So you couldn't score with a pass play, and there were no end zones. If the pass wasn't complete, the passing team got the ball at the spot where the pass was made. Unless it was third down, then it was a turnover at the spot where the pass was made. And there were 3 downs to make 10 yards. Is that not confusing? Basically, before this, if you threw the ball and the ball was dropped on the ground, the other team got the ball. It was a turnover. Now it's only an incomplete pass. And the team who threw the pass would get the ball at the spot where the pass was thrown, basically 5 yards back. But at least it wasn't a turnover, so it was more useful as an offensive weapon. Were the rules changes successful? From the standpoint of decreasing fatalities and serious injuries, yes. An article from The Dispatch from Moline, Illinois, January 4th, 1911, we get the following. That the new football rules have, in part, at least succeeded in lessening the danger of football was shown by a resume of football accidents and fatalities for the past season, showing that 16 young men were killed, making 13 less than in 1909 when 29 were killed. Lay observers of the game, however, commented that 16 deaths chalked against a pastime still leave room for improvement. So basically, there were 29 deaths the years before. It's dropped to 16, and everybody thinks, well, it's only 16 guys being killed by football. It's okay. This is progress. The article goes on to say only three of the 16 were college men, and 14 of the deaths occurred amongst boys ranging from 11 to 19 years. The death list, therefore, it was held, shows that more careful supervision is necessary among the teams and players. Many lists have been published, containing as high as 30 and 35 names, but on examination, these have been been found to be false, a number of deaths having occurred in the spring and summer as of the result of injuries last year. Here's a list of the injuries for the year because they actually kept track of the injuries that happened in football. So 65 broken collarbones had the list of injuries for 1910, 40 broken legs, 37 broken noses, 31 broken ribs, 20 broken ankles, 17 broken fingers, 13 broken shoulders, and 11 broken wrists follow in order. They, in almost most cases, were credited to either untrained men or immature youths. What is missing from that list is head injuries. In previous season, there were always serious injuries because of brain abscesses or concussions at least, and this report shows none. Now, with regards to the games, there were a number of scoreless ties, such as Harvard-Yale game. No shock there, given their reliance on mass play to score. But these results led to many complaints about the forward pass and the elimination of mass play. I went through a number of articles about the success of the rules or the failure of the rules, and the best explanation I found about 1910 came from the Herald and Review from Decatur, Illinois on December 7th, 1910. The article began, "Not in a good many years has any football season presented a more curious mixture of football than that which closed with the Army-Navy game last Saturday. From the standpoint of good football, the season was not a great success, but in reducing injuries, it accomplished all that the Rules Committee had hoped. It may also be admitted that the game had a better year than most of the critics had predicted for it when they learned of the radical changes made in the rules." Now, via the benefit of historical hindsight, the 1910 rules are an unbelievable success. The forward pass is expanded in usefulness, and the elimination of mass play allows football to move forward as a unique American sport and the biggest American sport of all. I know baseball fans might argue with that, but that's my statement. There you go. The crisis dies away, and while there are still changes to be made, the game is much closer to the modern game that we all know and love. There's more changes coming, and there's more foundation of college football videos coming. I hoped you enjoyed watching this episode of Hardcore College Football History. If you did, please feel free to subscribe and share this video with your friends. I'd like to grow this channel and continue making these videos, and I can only do that with your support. Thank you.